Welcome to Jobbed Out, the wrestling editorial that reminds you that the most decorated champion in all of pro wrestling will always be vacant. Yesterday in wrestling history, January 16th, 2000, WCW aired Sold Out from Cincinnati, Ohio. World Heavyweight Champion Bret Hart is forced to vacate the title due to post-concussion symptoms after a kick to the head from Goldberg. The new champion is set to be crowned in the main event as Sid Vicious, who was originally supposed to fight Hart, takes on Chris Benoit, who was supposed to fight for the US title, but Jeff Jarrett was also out with injury. What people don't yet realize, the contracts of Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn, and Dean Malenko are all set to expire at midnight. In a last-ditch effort to make Benoit re-sign, head booker Kevin Sullivan decides to pull the trigger and put the World Heavyweight Championship on Benoit. After all, who would leave knowing they're about to become world champ for the first time? Well, Benoit did. That's exactly what they did, though. So in WCW 2000 fashion, they finished the match by screwy means.
He lays on him, 1, 2, he's in the ropes. He's broken the plane of the ropes.
2 seconds later.
Back, pull back. It's over. We're gonna do world champion.
Now, it should have been a big moment for Benoit and a new era for WCW. I mean, they were putting their grandest prize in the hands of someone new. Yeah, Benoit was an established mid-card talent. He was a good hand, but they never really gave the guy the ball. He didn't have the charisma. He was incredibly short. He was a smaller man. The only other one-time WCW World Champions in history at this point were Ron Simmons, who had long since left for the WWF, and Goldberg. So the odds are really good that things were going to be great for Benoit. Multiple reigns, great feuds, huge just elevation to the top. Except Benoit had no intention of staying. The head booker was his current wife's ex-husband, the man she left for Benoit after their on-screen romance seeped into real life. Yikes. All of Benoit's best and closest friends, save for fellow Revolution member Shane Douglas, they're all leaving as well. Tired of being lower card filler, only existing to put over big NWO stars like Nash and Hogan. This was an all-for-one and one-for-all scenario, and Benoit was not going to allow himself to be the weak link that destroyed everything that his friends had worked for. This was a huge bargaining chip for everybody.
And the fact is, fans, we have no World Heavyweight Champion at this time. The title has been vacated.
So, the title, for the second time in only 24 hours, was vacated on January 17th, on Monday Nitro. The next champion, Sid Vicious. Arguably the choice they should have just gone with in the first place, only for him to vacate the title again one night later. Yeah, you remember the reset button? Ugh. The WCW World Heavyweight Championship would become vacant a total of 6 times in the year 2000 alone. It could be argued that this is where it all fell apart for WCW, that this was the moment. And its world title, who would later still see world champion Vince Russo, who still held the title longer than Benoit did before vacating it, and world champion David Arquette, who actually defended the thing. 2 weeks after walking away, the soon-to-be christened Radicalz made their WWF debut on Raw. Their first match is on SmackDown. Although we don't really talk about that because Guerrero got really freaking hurt. If not for this incident, though, we don't get WWE Champion Eddie Guerrero. We don't get World Heavyweight Champion Chris Benoit. Both, sadly, would meet their own demise only a few years later. And of course, you can't talk about Chris Benoit without the elephant in the room. Now, I've spoken on it before on my old channel, and I'll speak about it again, but no, not right now. We're not going to get into the topic of whether Benoit should be included into the WWE Hall of Fame. Not after all that's happened. At the same time, though, the whole reason we're talking about this right now is because this was a huge, pivotal moment in the Monday Night War. Like when Foley won the WWF Championship, or when Jericho jumped over to Raw. This was a moment that seemed like the WWF could do no wrong. And as we watched with regards to the World Heavyweight Championship, WCW could no longer do any right. So with that, I gotta ask you, if you were a WCW fan at the time, what was running through your head through all of this? When Bret had to give up his title and when Benoit won it? Or when Benoit had to give it up? Or when Sid had to give it up a week later? All of this happened in less than 8 days. Do you think if Benoit had stayed, would it have slowed the bleeding? Would half of the garbage we saw in 2000 have just never happened? Would the company still be in business today? That's the tough one. Let me know what you think in the comments section. For now though, I think it's time I got my shoulders off the mat. So thank you for tuning in to Jobbed Out. Catch you next time.